Cordkillers is a show that lets you know how to watch what you want, when you want, where you want. But the stuff you watch is why you do all of that. It's why you cut the cord so you can watch the stuff. And this is Spoilerin time, where we spoil the heck out of the stuff you watch. I'm Tom Merritt. Brian Brushwood, how are you?
Hey, man, I'm Brian Brushwood. Wait, you stole my line. I was going to tell them I was Brian Brushwood, and then all of a sudden you're telling them I'm Brian Brushwood.
Ha-ha, I'm a line stealer.
Oh, he's Bryce Castillo. Ha-ha, how do you like it?
He stole the producer line. Hey, guess what? Movie draft. Ha!
Yeah, let's start off with the movie draft.
I'm in first place.
Dude, you're not just in first place. I think you're going to run away with this thing, Tom. We've got, let's see, what came out this past week?
What came out this past week was Money Monster. Free State of Jones was supposed to come out for DTNS, but it's been delayed. So Money Monster didn't net you a lot. 14 million there. We have concerns.
Yeah, that's kind of disconcerting given how hard they were promoting it. I've seen
it's
that
concerning.
Thing. I've seen ads for this all over the place for the past 2 or 3 weeks. I'm really surprised it had such a soft opening. Meanwhile, Captain America: Civil War still had a very strong second week. Dropped 50%. So now Civil War's at 295. But I gotta tell you, like, I think there's maybe 100, 150 million left in the tank for Civil War.
DTNS was not supposed to jump in front of you. At this point, Captain America: Civil War should have propelled Night Attack, which has 3 movies, to first place.
Yeah.
While DTNS would pass Chainsaw Suit on whatever's left coming from the Jungle Book and Huntsman. And instead, Jungle Book has, at 311, has propelled us up into the top spot. Now, I think you're probably going to seize it back just on whatever's left out of Captain America, because I can't imagine Jungle Book's got much left.
I mean, yeah, we'll get ahead of you for a little bit, but let's say we have a comfortable $50 to $100 million lead over you. Night Attack has all that's left in the tank is Secret Life of Pets and Ghostbusters. Compare that to you have Free State of Jones, Now You See Me Too, Star Trek Beyond, and Suicide Squad. I don't think it's looking really good for Team Night Attack, at least against you.
Did you already see, too, that Margot Robbie is producing a Suicide Squad spinoff centered around Harley Quinn, but with all female superheroes in an ensemble cast?
I'll watch that.
Yeah.
We're talking about the draft.
The kind of thing that says, hey, the theater is feeling pretty good about what Suicide Squad's going to do. The theater, the studio. The theater's probably feeling pretty good, too, I have to say.
Yeah. All right. Well, congratulations on your win. Have you won a
what
summer?
What about Chainsaw Suit?
No, they're screwed. They're out.
And you're worried about Ghostbusters more than I am. I think Ghostbusters is going to do well. Secret Life of Pets is going to do great. Those are both your movies.
Yeah. Okay. Secret Life of Pets. Let's say it does 200 million. Let's say Ghostbusters does 150 million, and we get another 100 million. This still only puts us like barely just shy of 800 million. I feel like you're just going to stomp past it. I don't even want to talk about this anymore.
And what about Cordkillers? Don't forget Team Cordkillers, Malango and Christy Cates. They've got Warcraft. They've got X-Men Apocalypse. They've got The Purge. They've got Legend of Tarzan. They've got Independence Day. Like, they swooped up a bunch of movies that are going to do well. And even if they don't even meet expectations, they're going to start building up a pile.
Yeah, dude, I'm looking at that. This is not an $800 million slate. I don't see any way to spin it in which this becomes an $800 million slate. Can you?
Stop looking at my slate.
Okay, shall we move on to a bit of trio?
Hey, before we do, one of the pleasures of my week is watching for Crumdum to show up in my Twitter feed. It's Movie League Mike writing up a hilarious recap and predictions around the movie draft.
Yeah, and by the way, this led to his gig writing up stuff for DTNS, and Crumdum, of course, stands for Chat Realm's Ridiculously Unofficial Movie Draft Update Minute or something.
Memo.
Yeah.
You should first of all go find Crumdum on the Reddit. Look for, or just follow Movie League Mike on Twitter, and you can find the links in there. But he's got a Patreon, and if he doesn't hit $50 per issue, he's like, maybe it's just not worth doing Crumdum anymore.
Oh, don't talk that way.
Patreon.com/Crumdum. Just give 10 cents.
Yeah,
I don't care.
Right, we can get him to $50.
Get this guy to $50. For goodness sake.
Here, you talk while I go log into Patreon.com.
Yeah, I'm already pledged. So I'm putting my money where my mouth is here. Go read them, enjoy them, and give them $1 or something.
Heck yes.
All right, we're going to start triage and spoiling Game of Thrones at the same time because our email is from co-executive producer Ed about Game of Thrones. He says, hello, my Cordkillers friends. Well, hello, co-executive producer Ed. I missed writing you guys about last week's Game of Thrones episode, so I figured I'd combine both episodes into one. First off, The Girl Who Has No Name. I was a little disappointed that they didn't play up Arya's connection with the cats that were there in the room. In fact, every Stark, besides maybe Sansa, shows some affinity with warging. That's being able to inhabit an animal. There were rumors that Robb used to ride his wolf into battle, somehow knew about shortcuts through mountains in the Westerlands, and his wife in the books occasionally found him meditating in his tent, quote unquote. Brian's skills are obvious, and Bran's skills are obvious.
Well, first of all, also my skills are
your skills
obvious
are also
as well.
obvious.
Yeah,
that's true. You do a little warging, you know. Arya and Jon Snow both have wolf dreams. Rickon is an odd case that we don't have a lot of evidence for yet, but he is shown to be rather feral in Clash of Kings after his father died. For Rickon, remember the thing that Roose Bolton was saying before he died. The Boltons need the Starks in order to rule the North. Sansa's gone, but now they have Rickon, arguably the heir to Winterfell, since Bran technically is, but you get my point. So I agree that he will not kill Rickon. And in fact, I think there's more to the story than they're letting on. I personally believe that the Umbers, the house that brought Rickon in, are secretly Stark loyalists, and that Shaggy Dog's head wasn't actually Shaggy Dog. They plan on taking down the Boltons from inside, which would be awesome. But this is Game of Thrones, so I'm not getting my hopes up yet. And yeah, Ed, it was kind of sad to see Tonks go. I mean, Osha.
Yeah, it sure was. But separate from
because
that,
I thought that was the beginning of this plan, right? It's like, oh, she's going to try to kill him, and it's going to start the plan off, and then no, he just killed her. It was just like that.
Yeah. Okay. So let's go in reverse order. That scene I thought was really exquisite because it was a little bit familiar. You kind of smelled where it was headed. Like you saw what she was doing, you saw what he was thinking, and him responding to it or whatever. Which it was great because just at the moment you're like, oh, I see where this is. Oh dear. And all of a sudden there's a knife in her throat in a very brutal manner. That really turned Bonnie off. She was just like, she's like, oh man, like she kind of got up in disgust and left the room. Not at the graphicness of the killing, but just like that, you assholes, and off she goes.
Well, yeah, because I knew she wasn't going to get the knife. I knew she wasn't going to kill Ramsay. So I kind of thought, well, I'm either going to be surprised and she's going to kill him some other way. It's not going to be the knife. That's too obvious. Or he's just going to kill her. And that's what happened. He just killed her.
Yeah. By the way, now's as good a time as any for me to plug this afternoon at Future Boy. Why am I blanking on Chris's last name? Who wrote How Star Wars Conquered the Universe? And you're forgetting it too. Chris Taylor. It's fine. He'll never listen. It's fine. Chris Taylor wrote a fantastic article in Mashable about how the television show is doing things better than the books, and it talks about how as we get near the end game, the television show does a really good job of eliminating pawns and bringing all the characters together to fold in on a sensible impending ending. Whereas the books just George R.R. Martin just seems to love to add more and more pawns that wander in increasingly wild directions. Speaking of which, this is the first experience in all of Game of Thrones that I got to have from the books, from the television show at all. We got to see a Stark reunion, a genuine Stark reunion with two very transformed characters, Jon Snow and Sansa. This is the first conversation between the two we have ever witnessed. I mean, we assumed they had spoken before, but the only opportunity would have been in the very first episode, and they didn't.
Right. And those of you saying, well, Jon Snow's not a Stark, and those of you saying, well, Caitlyn saw Robb, forget it. You're missing the point.
Yes.
You're picking at nits. Leave the nits alone and enjoy the moment of two children who grew up together, who have been separated in a way where they probably thought they would never see each other, and one of them died, and they came back together. That was a tear-jerking moment. That scene of Jon and Sansa coming together and that beautiful talk about, like, I was such a jerk, and Jon's like, well, I was kind of broody too. Like, that was great and would have been enough for me in this episode. And it stands as just one of the big moments of this episode.
Oh, dude. And if you're talking about big moments as measured by the response it got on Twitter, in that case, a 3-second clip of Tormund eating fish and staring deeply into the eyes of Brienne was the runaway hit of this whole thing. Like that moment where he's just intensely staring at her, like clearly in love. It was great.
And Gwendolyn Christie too, like just the perfect display of disgust and uncomfortableness that you would expect.
But also measured poise, right? Where she's like, oh, so this is happening.
She's still being
there it is. There's the gif of it. It's amazing.
No, you're right. It's poise, discomfort, and disgust in perfect proportion.
Yes. We also got okay, so tell me this. I like the fact that we're getting advancement on Theon's story as he goes back to the Iron Islands. Pike. Is that what it is called?
Pike.
The Iron Pike, yeah. In the books, and yes, spoiler alert, there were books, they did such a good job of portraying Reek as so fundamentally broken that it was difficult to see him walking with anything that resembled poise or intention as he goes back to the back home. But having said that, they only dallied a bit in the first season or so on the television show, so I guess it's fine in that context. But what did you think of that scene? Because this was an interesting advancement as far as that goes.
Yeah, I thought this scene played out properly. She would suspect that he was up to no good because that's who he was. And he would be shocked that she would think that he was at all interested in being in the Kingsmoot, but also she just put that idea in his head. And now, as he is back at home and is starting to recover, I could imagine that some kind of idea might sprout out of that. But yeah, it's all about mistrust and the way that what the Boltons have done to Theon now infects the rest of his family.
Yeah, now that I'm thinking about it, like I forgot that we get a taste of the Kingsmoot in the books, and some of the intrigue. It's like a miniature Game of Thrones happening, because essentially what they do is they come together and they vote for a king.
It's like the pocket-sized Game of Thrones.
Yeah, no, it's actually a bit like House of Cards, really.
Take it in the car with you, and you play it on the road.
Only all the pieces, go all over the place, and then they hit the brakes, and everything's all in the wheel well.
Yeah, in this Game of Thrones, you win or you drown.
So, what else did we see? Oh, of course, I continue to love the marriage of Tyrion and Varys, and I love the fact that we are seeing the easy back and forth between the two, as if they've been married for 20 years, where they know when to let the other one take the wheel on certain things. I loved seeing, silver-tongued Tyrion work his magic. I thought all of that was great. There was a bit of controversy separate from that on the whole Daenerys doing the same trick a second time, because in the books...
Whoa. Hold on. I'm not done with Tyrion yet.
Okay, all right. Let's go back to Tyrion.
Because I have a theory about that. We saw Tyrion in King's Landing get authority and run things in the absence of the true authority and do very well.
And get no credit.
As a deal maker and have it all fall apart. Are we about to see the same thing? And it ties into Daenerys coming back, right? But when Daenerys returns, she is not going to be happy that he gave the other slave cities 7 years. She is a black and white viewing person. She's also going to have an entire Dothraki army, it looks like, at her beck and call to put things in order. And I have a feeling that when she returns, she's going to tear up everything Tyrion's been doing.
I don't think so, because Game of Thrones has shown that it's a television show capable of showing character growth, and we've seen the growth in Tyrion. He's much more nuanced, having been a slave and come back and all that stuff. I believe that's one thing. If we are setting up to a place where Daenerys is the one who takes the Iron Throne, then definitely she needs to grow. She cannot continue to be this cartoon black or white individual.
Oh no, but okay, and you may be right about her emotional state, but she is going to come back and take over those cities and take their armies with her to go over the sea. That would be my guess.
Yeah, that seems like a lot to accomplish before we run out of episodes.
She got dragons though.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, okay, so let's talk about that magic trick ending.
Oh, one last thing. Beautiful line when Tyrion says, like, I was a slave. Like, how long were you a slave?
He's like, long enough.
Long enough.
Long enough to know.
Anyway, upstairs. Here we go. All right. Yes, Daenerys.
Yeah, by the way, I'm sure I mentioned this previously, but every time I still love seeing Grey Worm in every scene, knowing that he rapped or he sung on a freestyle rap on Dan Harmon's podcast, Harmontown.
Just wait for him to bust out.
Dr. Ken. Yeah. So here's the thing. In the books, and here's the funny part. I read the books. I have not read a lot of commentary around the books. With Sword and Laser, you talk to a bunch of authors, you talk to a bunch of fans, and you kind of fill out the story and what's implied on a lot of stuff. I read the books once, and I took away, maybe I didn't have the eye for detail, but George R. R. Martin has made it clear that when Daenerys came out of the fire unscathed, it was a one-time thing that worked out because the witch who was practicing blood magic happened to be a blood sacrifice at the exact time that she happened to be holding dragon eggs inside of a fire, and it's a one-time thing. She's not fireproof, even though, she takes scalding hot baths, as he mentions repeatedly. That has nothing to do with the fact that she's fireproof, and she's not immune to fire. And then, the television show is like, yeah, no, we don't have that nuance. We pretty clearly told you in the first season that she's immune to fire. So guess what? That's her out, is she's immune to fire.
I think that is something that is only going to make you misery if you sit there and go, well, wait a minute, would George R. R. Martin have done this? Hell yeah, he might have. And he might. We might read the books and find out that she pulls off this exact same trick, and he goes into long detail explaining how she's able to pull it off. I don't care. I'll enjoy that in the book if and when it comes along, or if it doesn't, I will enjoy the fact that in the TV show, this is perfectly consistent. They never promised me she wouldn't burn up in the show or that she would. And so it made perfect sense to me that, like, oh yeah, she's going to pull off the trick because she's fireproof. Eileen, who's never read the books, was like, yeah, she's going to pull off the trick because she's fireproof. Like that was her expectation. So it's the peril of having read the book and seen the TV show that it might cause cognitive dissonance, but take some Dramamine and enjoy the show.
Well, and specifically, I'm on the side of like, if I could, and I've said this before, if I could, I would unread the books just so I could experience the television shows fresh. But guess what? That's exactly where I'm at now, because we are now beyond the books. And so none of the knowledge I have affects my enjoyment going forward. I thought it was great. I think it's exactly what she needed. I think everybody expected her to use the Drogon trick to get the Dothraki on her side.
I totally did. Yeah.
And they didn't. I thought that was a good twist.
Yeah, the fact that the dragons didn't even show up is so brilliant to me, because she has now shown that she commands this army all on her own, and dragons showing up are just going to be extra awesome, like extra for whatever else is needed. Like Daenerys is the most powerful person in Essos right now.
Yeah, so I also, as brief as it was, enjoyed the Dario and Ser Jorah scenes.
Buddy comedy.
Yeah, well, the buddy comedy, it reminded me of the time they did essentially the same thing with Jaime and who's the sellsword? Bronn.
Bronn. Yeah.
Jaime
They've done it a few times. You're right.
Yeah, Jaime and Bronn, and I guess Jaime and Brienne. But Jaime and Bronn going down to Dorne, which just reminded me, like, whatever happened to Bronn? Do we know where they implied that he's going to go off and marry somebody's fat daughter and be a lord somewhere? Is that where he is now?
I guess, yeah. I don't remember how they wrapped it up in the TV show, but he did sort of say, you know what, I'm going to go have fun on my own. See ya.
Yeah. I expect a surprise appearance from Bronn at some point.
That'd be kind of cool.
My guess.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, we have two other set pieces. We, of course, have King's Landing, where we are watching the the consolidation of old powers, where they're all like, hey man, what they want us to do is bicker and fight among ourselves. What do you say the old guard, comes back and kicks it old style? Why don't you bring in your armies? We'll fight
You know who I hate more than you, Lady Olenna? The High Sparrow. So let's team up on this one.
Yeah. Which makes sense. And again, I'm utterly shocked to find myself, finding the Lannisters sympathetic. But at this point, all three of the Lannister siblings, all of the remaining Lannisters who I know are alive, I dig.
And I think the High Sparrow may have made a mistake with Marjorie. Sending her in to see Loras seems to have stiffened her resolve more than broke her down.
Yeah, although they did give us a set piece to see how broken Loras is.
He's gone. He's over.
I wish they had either told a story or given us some indication, or maybe, he's missing a limb or something to imply, because Sir Loras had kind of a rough lot to begin with, and yet was making the best of it. He seemed to be a survivor to begin with, so to see him broken just by starvation.
But he also enjoyed his comforts. So my thought process in watching that clicked immediately, like, this is a guy who liked soft beds and luxury, and he has none of that now. Like they definitely reinforced that. He liked nice things, and he is in the opposite of a place with nice things.
Yeah, fair enough. And then finally, we go back to the Vale, where Peter Baelish comes back with, again, I assume that's the same kid who is sucking on the tit of Lysa.
Looked like it, yeah.
Everybody's really old. This show's been around a long time.
Yeah, I know. Isn't that crazy? Yeah. Bran is like 6 feet tall, yet he's only 2 years older than he's. Or not even 2 years older than he was in episode 1.
I mean,
the story. It's
I don't know. I kind of like the consistency across the board, because like that kid, there was no reason they needed to cast. Same thing with Rickon.
I don't think he's going to play much of a part either. So you might as well have the kid there, who's familiar looking, than give us somebody else and have us go, wait, is that the kid? That's not the same actor. So sure, put him in there, because it looks like from the previews that Baelish is going to the Wall, at which point Baelish and Sansa will have met up together, which makes me think that maybe in the books, which have a different plot, that's where Baelish and Sansa end up.
Yeah, interesting. I didn't know that about the previews for next week, because I've made a habit of turning it off. I've stopped watching the next week's on, but I'll tell you this much: the thing that really stuck out to me is that one thing the television show has been absolutely consistent with the entire show long is that Peter Baelish is extraordinarily careful and very precise with his actions, and always chooses the winning side. So for him to say, now is the moment, we are going to enter this fight and we're going to take Winterfell, is significant.
Well, and what did we find out math-wise in this episode? Ramsay has around 5,000 troops, and Jon has about 2,000 wildlings.
Yeah.
And Peter Baelish has an extra army that wants to take over Winterfell. Isn't that convenient?
Yeah, I don't know how convenient it is given what it took for us to get here, but certainly the math adds up.
Here's a gap in numbers. Here's some numbers.
Yes.
Those two seem to be going together.
Although you could have convinced me just as easily, like the nice thing about the wildlings having kind of that magical otherworldly background is like you could tell me that 2,000 wildlings equals 5,000 Northmen or whatever.
Yeah, but I don't think
I
would have
believed
to.
it.
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Agreed.
That's where Baelish seems to be. That's where Baelish said he was.
So anyway, are you with me? Like it's a pretty boring show. We're done watching it. Well,
no joke. I was saying this earlier to Veronica. I don't remember how far in. It wasn't very far in to the show, but I was like, this one's going to be slower than the last ones. They can't keep the pace up, but that's okay. It's still enjoyable. And then everything happened. It was like right when I thought that, just the floodgates were unleashed. Yeah,
that's amazing.
This is the best season yet. Absolutely.
Hey, let's talk about Daredevil, man.
Yeah, so you're catching up slowly. You're almost to the midpoint, huh?
Yeah, I assume I'm close. We just got to the end of the Punisher arc, which, by the way, I kind of love the fact that like I wasn't paying attention to how far along I was, and then all of a sudden it felt like the ending of a series or the ending of a story or whatever. And then I was like, wait, no, we're only like 4 or 5 episodes in. I kind of love that the television show has the opportunity to become increasingly more comic book like. And we were talking about this on Weird Things yesterday, how there was chunks of Civil War that I was like, oh, I just assumed this is about a thing I hadn't watched. When it turned out that I had watched it, it was just a whole plot arc that was like, to be fair, was 3 years ago, and there have been 2 Captain America appearances since then. And so I don't know. I love the fact that what makes the comics great is their fractal nature. You can read it, not having read anything, and get like, oh, I get it. This guy's the hero. This guy's the bad guy, and the hero beat the bad guy. Or you can read it as somebody who has read 80 different comic books of all the different varieties come together. You're like, oh my God, that's the guy that did the thing, and they're talking about this guy and all that stuff. That's finally really becoming apparent. And I think maybe this first arc with the Punisher more than anything, because it's like it's a self-contained thing and I'm sure that the Punisher will be back later this same season. But even if he wasn't, I'd be really glad for having this background going into watching the Punisher series when it comes out.
Yeah,
you can't talk, can you?
No, I can't. Talk. There's so many things I want to say related directly to that, what you're saying about the Punisher arc and what it sets up and everything. So yeah, I guess my question is, at this point, when we hit that sort of resolution that you're talking about, I wondered whether I was going to stay interested. And I think I did. Are you still interested to keep pushing forward?
Oh yeah, no, I definitely will. And part of, again, if it was just me, I would have watched all of them by now just in a straight setting. But it's one that I'm watching with Bonnie, and she really only has free time to watch one a night. So we're just doing it night by night. I'll definitely go through. Somebody in the chat has exactly echoed what I was thinking. When the guy playing the Punisher played Shane on The Walking Dead, hated him. And I was not clear how much I hated him for his Shane-ness or if it's just there's something about the actor that rubbed me the wrong way. Very, very happy to announce that the actor's great. He's a great actor. He's a great Punisher. He's awesome.
Yeah, I felt the same way. And I even on The Walking Dead had a split sort of feeling about him where I would say, gosh, I kind of want to like Shane, but he's awful and I can't like him. John Bernthal is the name of the actor.
Yes.
John Bernthal. I was like, I think I like John Bernthal, but man, do I hate Shane. And Shane just kept getting worse and worse and worse.
Yes.
To the point where you're like, I don't care if maybe I like John Bernthal. I hate Shane. The Punisher made it very clear that I, in fact, do like John Bernthal. He is a fine actor and does an amazing job. And the fact that I hated Shane so much is probably a testament to his chops as an actor.
Well, what's
the Punisher is a much more sympathetic character who's also a bad guy. I have mixed feelings about the Punisher, but I sure love his actual portrayal of him.
Yeah, I don't think I like Frank Castle, but I do. But I at least I don't hate him as much as I hated Shane, to where I could really enjoy John Bernthal's acting. Dude, very, very excited to see the rest.
Let's move along to Justified, episode 5, season 2, where Raylan is told not to go down to Harlan, which seems start to sound like a broken record. But he goes down to Harlan anyway and gets sucked into an investigation because of his state cop buddy. And honestly, this is the first episode that felt less like a plot of the week, although there were plot of the week elements to it, and more like we're slipping into an ongoing narrative. Part of it is Boyd, actually, right? And part of it is Raylan.
Can I be honest? I watched this, I think, less than 36 hours ago, and I have almost virtually no memories of Raylan. When you mention that plot, I'm like, I don't remember any of that. But now that I think about it, I was like, oh yeah, he was there at a barn and he tricked them into thinking there was something. And then, the mom bashed the hand and all that stuff. Like, all that is vague in the gray background. It's the Boyd Crowder show to this guy right here.
Which it was a continuation of a story that we're very invested in, which is Boyd going to go back to his ways? And wow, that was a well-told story. I enjoyed that.
It was good too because they set up enough walls to lock him in, to trap him in that position to where there was no way out. I liked his way out. I loved that scene where he uses the phone call and essentially wiretaps the next room over, the room he left, to find out the real story. And then you realize, like, oh, he's got no choice. There's not enough time. There's literally nothing he can do. And what's interesting is you don't know how his reformation is going. And you find yourself, like, he's clearly in a place where it's like he feels like his back's up against the wall. He figures out a clever way to get out of it. But that one moment, like, lest you forget who Boyd Crowder is, they make sure to leave one guy alive so he could pull out a revolver and just cold-blooded kill him right there. And it's like, oh, that's right. He's a bad man, or was a bad man. He just murdered a guy.
Yeah. Also took $20,000 to help out Ava. So it's for good purpose, but he didn't leave all the money.
Yeah, give or take. I mean, it was justified.
It was a justified theft. Yeah, it was. I'm not even going to get mad at that at this point, because that use of that word was justified right there.
Good. I didn't shoehorn it in. Oh man, continuing to enjoy it. I think I'm gonna love it. So at this point, I feel like Boyd Crowder is finally becoming a truly interesting character. Raylan, I think, is interesting enough. I'm looking forward to the Marvel team up between the two, because we haven't seen that yet.
And going back to the Punisher, right? I like that Boyd. I was worried that this was going to be Boyd and Raylan are always at odds, and which one's going to have the upper hand this week. And I feel like it's more of, we're going to put them in unlikely situations of cooperation. And that's so well grounded in the story that they've laid very well, that these were two people who grew up together. And they have shared bonding experiences from when they were young and from when they were working in the mines together and growing up in the small town of Harlan. And so even if they don't like each other, they feel something for each other. And that is going to play out in odd ways here and there.
Yeah, it's sort of, it's hard for me to remember those times of being in high school. I guess it's like high school, right? It's like there are people that you don't like, but then you get paired with them to do a science project. And it doesn't matter that you didn't like him last year, because now this is this year and you want to get an A. So you do what it takes to make a good project. I guess. I mean,
every time I go back to Greenville, I have the feeling that Raylan has for Boyd Crowder with somebody. I run into somebody. And it's not, here's a nemesis kind of feeling. Sure. It's more of a like, oh my gosh, Jamie Stanton. What the hell? How are you? What have you been up to? Jamie Stanton and I we weren't best friends in high school. And I think we probably got in a couple of fights here and there. But now, all these years later, it's like, holy cow, Jamie Stanton. What are you up to?
And it's funny how it's like you could turn down the volume on a lot of stuff. And we hear about this all the time. There's stories of, someone murders somebody's wife and then later gets forgiven and the two of them end up becoming actual friends or whatever. It's like, it's not the craziest, most outrageous thing to imagine.
Yeah. Anyway, love the world and love where it's going. I guess if I had two criticisms of this episode, one would be, like you say, the Raylan story was a little bit forgettable. And I feel like it's just, we're kind of building up bricks, because he had to talk to the girl and be like, hey, if you ever need anything, call me. So that looks like that.
I actually did rather like that. And I like the girl.
No, I'm saying that's building up for payoff, but it didn't do anything in this episode.
I like the girl, and maybe it's because she reminds me of the protagonist of The Last of Us, the kid.
Joel, and the other criticism is, I mean, really, he banked on Ava calling that number at that exact time. Like, she is not reliable. The fact that she would actually be able to call the number at that time, and that would be the time that he really needed it, seems pretty unlikely.
And plus also that he would write that note. Like, here's the thing. He bet heavily that either they were going to discover that they would not discover the note. And if he was truly betting his life that they would not ask to look at the note he was writing, seems like he might have, emphasized the importance of it a little more than like, please call this number at this time. XOXO Boyd.
And Ava is the type of character who would be like, oh, right, I'll get to that, and then forget all about it. Right?
Yeah.
Like, best of intentions. Like, I don't know, it didn't seem important. I was going to do it, but then next thing I knew, I had a whiskey, and it was 7:00.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, regardless, look forward to next week.
Yes, you should look forward. I think it's right for you to look forward to next week.
Is it right?
And
Is it
legitimate?
legitimate?
Yeah, no,
It's
I think it's
legitimate
I think
to
it's
look forward to next week,
absolutely.
yeah.
You could make a case for looking forward to next week.
It's your prerogative.
Makes sense.
Yeah, spoil you then.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.